We wanted to respond to the assumption that violent-sounding passages in Scripture would lead to more violent actions in the communities that consider these texts to be sacred Scripture. So we drew upon the classical rabbinic approach to biblical war commands. They said that a direct command from God is necessary to wage war in God's name. And the rabbinic text asserted that they themselves didn't have access to that type of direct divine communication, and so couldn't engage in such wars. So in that tradition of interpretation, engagement with violent-sounding scriptural texts leads to less violence rather than more. We wanted to see whether this example could inspire new thinking about how wars are justified in our world today. International politics would certainly look very different if countries said that they couldn't go to war without an explicit command from God. That might sound strange in modern ears, but typical justifications for war today also rest on very questionable assumptions much of the time.
The research behind this film stems from a research project on scripture and violence. We're interested in violent-sounding scriptural texts and the various ways that people today respond to them, especially people's responses to violent-sounding passages in other people's scriptures. One often hears concerns expressed about the Bible and the Quran and the role that they play in religious communities. But the fact that the Bible and the Quran contain some violent-sounding passages doesn't mean that your Jewish or Christian or Muslim neighbor is any more likely to act violently than you are.
We had an interesting time working with Riitta to figure out how our research, which was first formulated in written form, could be best conveyed in visual form to a wider audience. So we talked back and forth about how one could best portray the notion of divine commands from God and how to portray biblical narratives of violence and conquest, especially when it isn't clear what that actually would have looked like.